I'm addicted to my phone, to social media. I think it's become it's so gnarly. The likes-based system is so crazy when you step away from that. And you hear the people who founded these social media platforms don't let their children use it.
Right.
The person that invented the like button regrets it.
Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Newforum. We are always excited to bring you inspiring creators, visionaries, and investors to spark conversations on the new perspective on topics of crypto, the metaverse, NFTs, and DAOs. Today's episode focuses on a super photographer and creative director, Clare Gillen. With a background in wellness, her playful photographs and films explore the nature of humanism, social connection, and contemporary life. She has worked with artists such as Girl in Red, Rihanna, and many more. She conceptualizes and produces stage, music, videos, artworks, and many more. Hello, Clare. We're super honored to have you on this episode.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Perfect. Clare, we could start off with you telling us about yourself, your work as a creative director and a photographer.
Absolutely. I am from Philadelphia, and I went to a tiny little hippie university in North Carolina, and I studied photo there, but I didn't learn many technical skills there. It was more like running around in the woods on hallucinogens. And
I wouldn't have expected that right now.
I know. And so, I didn't have a lot of supplies, but I did take a Photoshop class, and learning Photoshop changed the game for me because I was able to take simple portraits of my friends and duplicate them and change their color and have a lot of fun and experiment. And so then that turned into moving back to Philadelphia after university. Didn't have a plan, and I ended up meeting a fine artist whose name is Alex DeCorte. And I coincidentally had learned how to sew because there were these pants I wanted from Japan that were way too expensive. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to make them. And so I learned how to sew, and suddenly I had this skill set. And this artist needed a sewer. And the word got out that I could sew, and I ended up making him a lot of curtains, and then I became this man's assistant. And we traveled to Europe, and I was in his work. In fact, when I went to the Louisiana Museum in Copenhagen once, I went alone. I walked in. I was the poster, the museum poster of his work, wearing the pants I made.
Wow.
Awesome. That's right? Pretty awesome.
Sorry.
Yeah. So then that turned into, wanting to leave Philadelphia. I was going to move to New York, and I met a creative director in Europe who hired me and helped me move to LA, Willow Perone. And then he and I worked on Rihanna's tour. And that's where I really learned how to be a creative director. After leaving his office, I became a creative director with those skills. And then as I worked in creative direction, I kind of started to bring the photography back in. And the background in wellness, I did, I was kind of in the city, terrible posture, drinking, smoking, and I actually found yoga, which really helped get me back on a path of being in touch with myself. And in learning yoga, I became a teacher. I did a teacher training, and that's where I learned how to tell people what to do with their bodies, which totally informed the work that I do in LA, which became directing. So I've been doing more directing now. And that's a bit about my background.
This is such a inspiring story already. I cannot tell you, I can relate on so many levels, like the yoga, and also, you touching upon not having all the resources, but you found your way through. And I feel like that's really admirable, seeing your portfolio now. I want to ask you, what inspires you today? what inspires you today, or like on a daily basis as a creative director? How do you find your inspiration, kind of?
Yeah, so I'm actually in a big transitional space right now. I honestly would say that for many years, my motivating force was money and income. Because coming from a place where I didn't have that accessible easily, I worked really hard to create some support for myself. And I think for so long, I would say yes to everything, which I think is good advice. But ultimately now I definitely feel like post-pandemic, I mean, we're still in a pandemic. In this space now, there's definitely a new energy I have around wanting to infuse more of what I feel passionate about in life. So I've actually stopped working for a few months. It's been like 4 months. I haven't worked. And it's all, you know, there's a transition happening, but within that, I want to figure out a way to make more work for myself for the first time, really, because all of this work I do, it's very creative, but it's often in service to other people. So I want to find a way to infuse my current interest, which is the mystery of consciousness. Didn't see that one coming. And kind of like maybe spirituality a little bit, energy, and openness, and kind of honestly science and metaphysical world that I want to discover more about. I want to figure out a way to bridge the gap between those interests and, you know, the very approachable work that I've been doing.
Yeah, I think we all like went through this really big changed through like what happened in the last year, and you know, you reflect a lot and you think about, okay, how, you know, work changes, your consciousness, like you said, changes, your what you want changes, and also what you touched upon, like that you don't want to work all the time for other people. Still, I want to touch quickly on, you know, I've seen you working with such amazing artists, and you know, to name a few, like Blood Orange, Channel Tres, and Shlomo are excuse me, like Tinashe, Alexa Demi, like all these people are like inspiring to me. And I wanted to ask you, how was it like working with these people? Like, were there any, like, you know, what made it exciting, and what were maybe the challenges? Or yeah, if you would briefly touch on that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think with a lot of these situations, I will say, like, I love Los Angeles so much, and I love New York, and I just think that these places, like, you can meet your idols in a weird way, and then something about, and this goes back to the consciousness and the energy part, like if you're open and if you're vulnerable, you find yourself in these positions with people where you're like, oh, do you want to make pictures? Do you want to do something together? And then suddenly, you know, you're in this space creating work. And it doesn't always happen like this, but for Channel Trace, for example, he and I just like clicked, and we took a bunch of photos for fun. And then that was interesting because there was no money involved. It was like purely for fun. We had so much fun. All of those photos ended up, I saw those photos on Playboy, WeTransfer, his cover art, t-shirts, like, and then of course, you know, some money came from that, which is the secondary part, but really at first it was about the energy and the connection. So so that was really fun. You know, I think oftentimes there's not a lot of time in the music industry, and things are needed very quickly, so that is kind of a hindrance. But I think if there's like time to explore and play is really important to me in these opportunities.
Yeah, and like you said, the connection with the artists, and you know, yeah, that is so amazing. You know, seeing your work with like maybe one of your favorite artists and like having a connection with them. I think that's the important thing, you know, that you have a creative connection. Thank you for answering that one.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And I really love when you were talking about like your initial intention when you started off, and then where you're getting to, and being in a space of, you know, transitioning, being, you know, more spiritual, more conscious, and it's like the intention is changing as we grow, as we evolve. And I'm wondering how the social media play, like what role does social media play in it right now, you know, because I'm really interested to know.
Oh my God. so complicated. It's literally like this morning I was having this image of wanting to make a photo of hanging out and like me as like a devil and angel, full body transparent, like 3 people almost. And that image, seeing that feels like the answer weirdly, because it feels like so positive and so negative at the same time. And it's like with anything, it can spiral out of control so quickly, right? And it's like I'm addicted. I'm addicted to my phone, to social media. You know, I think it's become it's so gnarly. The likes-based system is so crazy when you step away from that. And you hear the people who founded these social media platforms don't let their children use it.
Right.
The person that invented the like button regrets it. It's like, I think it's really dark, but it's also so amazing to have this platform. You know, I think about my mother's generation or my grandparents' generation, where there are women who, it's like, how else do you have a voice? You know what I mean? I think that like things are so different from how they were even 30 years ago, where even 20 years ago, where there wasn't a place to share yourself. And so many people have been able to, you know, share these strange parts of them that have almost become accessible and B, almost like can be monetized, or, you know, become, you know, a snowball effect to become like a career even.
Right.
I also think that it's weirdly like so oversaturated, that seeing all these images all day long almost makes me less interested in photography.
This is another point I wanted to touch on, because now you're mentioning that, it's like, do you know, how does that influence your work? And like, do you always post straight away, or, you know, because I feel like social media kind of can be a part of your work while you're creating, you know, because you're making photos and you're editing and stuff. So do you always go with the flow with like posting, or do you have certain rules that you stick by with that?
I have like this weird kind of like, I'm very intent on like how things look together on the grid, which I think is a hindrance. But yeah, I would say that like what's really sad sometimes is like work distills down into one tiny square of a social media post, right? And so it can be confusing to be like, oh, I spent all this time and energy, especially as a creative director, because as a creative director, you're not getting the photo credit. And you might spend months and months and months on something, and then the artist just tags the photographer, and you're like, but this is my job. This is my like whole career. Like I concepted this.
Right.
And you're just not, because creative direction isn't even acknowledged in the same way.
You don't get the full ownership like the artist does, or
right. And people don't even understand the role oftentimes, you know, whereas like photography, it's like, yep, they took that picture, we get it. That actually weirdly inspired me to get back into photo, because I was like, this is my photo, not their photo.
Right.
But yeah, I would say, yes, I post and I try to like delete the app sometimes. And it's definitely a love-hate relationship.
Incredible. You know, you mentioned the word monetize, and that got me thinking of the creative economy. And so like, I'm wondering, what do you think can be improved? You know, what improvement do you wish to see in that space? Like, because, you know, we have access to the social media platforms, but then it's you know, negatives and positives, but obviously we can see where things could go, you know, and if you have any thoughts on that, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting to see people exploring that right now, right? Like Newforum, and my friend Trevor Skeet made Friends with Benefits, which is a new social media platform, which is also crypto based. And I think they're trying to figure out where it feels more of like community building in a way. I think that improving it probably looks like making it less addictive, but then it's sort of like, who's building a company with the intent to like make it less addictive? Not many people.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, I think I think I think it's tricky. I think that it's interesting for me to now be like a millennial watching people use TikTok, where I'm seeing the difference, Instagram being so polished and TikTok being so much more of this like raw kind of explorative space makes me kind of want to get into it. But I also fantasize about the day when I'm like 60, 70, and we're just not using it anymore.
And there's like 70 apps and everyone's
right. And we're like, you know, the 8-year-olds are all like, oh, do you have like Zoom Zop? And we're like, what? No. I forget the question. How would I, what's the question?
What would you like to see change or improve in the creative economy?
Oh, in the creative economy, right? Not even talking about social media necessarily. Okay, creative economy, I would say, specific to my arena, it's just there's no time. There's no, people will spend a year making an album and then come to get visuals in the 11th hour. They're like, we have 4 days and we need a photo shoot, we need, you know, the artwork designed, we need to look. There's not a lot of understanding around how this stuff works. And I think that if people could just be really upfront about the transaction, that would really help. For example, I spent a couple weeks ago many conversations around an artist, and only to find out before, you know, right before, that the budget was just not, it's like, no, that's not going to work for anybody. In fact, like, why weren't you more transparent about that at first? So I think just like transparency, openness. I think it also really takes, like, what I've noticed is vulnerability, again, coming back into the equation, because a lot of people don't know how to talk about art, especially in the music space or tech space even. And so being like, I don't know the word, but like this, and being able to, like, you know, not be super, what am I trying to say? Like, not necessarily having to have total control over it, and being able to like ask questions and just like make this a little bit more transparent.
Right.
Yeah, this is something that we at New Life also, you know, touch a lot on, because we think about, you know, what could smart contracts do for creators, what could social tokens do, and all of these things, you know. And even with our app, when the app started, we try to focus everything around the proof of creativity, and like people really like taking the time in to see, okay, what can I relate to in this piece of art or video or picture, you know, to come back from this like algorithm driven, you know, economy kind of like. So that is something that we spend time in, and that we would like to see we focus on the art of creation, you know, exactly like like creative directors like you. That's why we're so interested in. So my next question would be, also, I think the audience would love to know, what is your experience so far with the crypto space, with NFTs? Are you part of any DAOs, or, you know, how have you dipped your toe into all of these things?
Yeah, for sure. Great, important question. I'm a part of, I guess, a DAO that is friends with benefits, but I'm not actively engaged necessarily. I'm definitely like still on Instagram for the most part. I was invited through what was my agency to be a part of an NFT drop through Zora. And that was amazing because there was like infrastructure around it. And I was really inspired to make something new. So that was actually the first video piece that I've ever made. And I was like, I'm going to learn, you know, how to edit. And that was great and hilarious, because I like put a lot of time into making like a 1-minute video instead of just making like a GIF or contributing a still, which would have just been easy. I wanted to do something new. And so it was amazing to have that NFT sell and to learn about the process. I would say that I'm not surprised that I think I recently read that only 5% of artists contributing to NFTs are women. Not surprising. I think I was one of the only, we did like a Clubhouse conversation after. And I think it was like, 8 men and me. And it was interesting to talk to everyone and to hear how the conversation kind of traveled into this, like into talking about like day trading, and something like pretty off topic. But I would say that I think it's interesting for sure how the conversation is opening up. And it's definitely something I would do more of, but I would definitely want my hand held a bit through it, just because the buying the gas for the NFT and the getting it minted was just something that it was new for me. And so, I think like as we move forward, that'll become more approachable as more people are doing it. But who knows if as more people are doing it, it will be as like coveted or
it's a quite new space for everyone, and I think we will find our way through it, but it's great that you take the initiative into the space. Like you said, there's not a lot of women in blockchain, in NFTs right now, but you take the initiative to learn and educate yourself and try things. I think that's great.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for representing the ladies.
Yeah. Yes. No, and I think it sounds interesting that Newforum or New Life, rather, both are maybe a little bit more approachable, it seems. And I think that like I'm not interested in one foundation over the other necessarily, but it'd be nice to just have it be accessible, but maybe that takes away the mystique.
But that's like what we love about what we do at work and our community, is that we can ask questions. We have women in the team. We still figuring it out, but we are open and we can ask anyone in the team or in our community. Okay. And also that's why we want to build this community for people to come together from different spaces and maybe collab or find ways they can do their NFT drops or different partnerships eventually.
Yeah, cool. Starting the conversations, and this is like definitely like the perfect way to do that and to be able to put it out there to make it accessible to more people. And so we're just super honored that we can actually have you here and have these conversations with you, and others can get inspired. So speaking about this space, I'm wondering, like, obviously Metaverse is like all over now. And I'm curious as to how you find or how you see this influence or impacting your work as a creative director, as a photographer, and also if you've thought about like the potential concerns or negative impact in terms of on users and the society, especially because you're now thinking more around the consciousness and your intentions around your work is changing. I'd really like to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah. A friend of mine was working on a report about gaming for high sobriety, and I learned in that I wasn't, when you're doing your thing, you're not aware necessarily of what's going on next to you. Right. But me waking up to the fact that gaming is the biggest industry, like the biggest. And gaming, everything is becoming gamified, right? So everything is pushing towards this metaverse, which I think is so fascinating, because in learning a little bit more about consciousness, for example, there's this guy, Donald Hoffman, who talks about the fact that, there's this monism, there's this consciousness, and that we embody, a piece of it, but it's completely skewed because of our physical reality, right? So we're limited to our sensory perception, and we're in this body, and we're kind of prone to like fighting, flighting, mating, eating, right? And we can't necessarily like assimilate with the one, if you will, very easily, maybe until we die. And so I think what's interesting about that is that, to me, it's like the same recipe as what people are doing on the metaverse. It's the same thing. It's not different. It's not that different, other than it's not like fully physical, but I think mentally it's the same thing. So to me, it seems completely natural. And it seems like it could be really advantageous in a lot of ways, right? If you are poor, you don't have access, you can see this whole other world, or you're in school, you're supposed, especially with COVID, right? Oh my God, like you can't run around and play and scream in someone's face, but maybe you can on the metaverse. But I think where it gets darker or more sad is when it's pushed to an extreme. And of course, we understand social media addiction, and of course, gaming addiction is even crazier, where people are gonna only want to live there. And to me, it's weirdly like, let them eat cake in the metaverse if that's all they want to do all the time. I think that it's fascinating. I'd love to learn more about it, honestly. I also just, it just seems like natural, honestly.
I have never like looked at it that way. Like just now, talking to you, realizing, okay, like it's really like a consciousness thing, you know. I saw it more for like, okay, like this is this cool like VR that we're gonna build, or like this cool extra world, but not thought about like the, you know, the consciousness part of it. That's really interesting. I think we have a lot to explore in a positive way, and also, you know, we have to use these technologies and things in the right amount and in the right way.
Yeah, someone once said something along the lines of like, maybe like, you know, hypothesis around where aliens came from. It's like we using resources, right? And it's not obviously sustainable. And so we're gonna get smaller and smaller and smaller, and to just be conscious, to be just consciousness waveform, which almost is weirdly like the metaverse is taking us there.
Right.
And then maybe it's that consciousness waveform that's then inhabiting a body on some other planet.
That is an amazing thought.
It is. And I actually really liked when you touched on the fact that like it creates this world where most people would not have access to, you know. And I grew up in a developing country, and a lot of people wish to travel, they wish to see other places, but they can't afford to. So I'm just like imagining like that would give them some sort of a taste of it even. So that was an incredible point. So I'm wondering if there's like anything you'd like to share with our audience, like a key takeaway, or you know, anything.
Let's see. I think that it's so easy to feel held down by the weight of all of the madness. It's so much madness. I could cry, where it's culture and all of these confines, and it's structurally exhausting, right? I just think that like, if you can tap in, there is more. And if you can tap into the mystery and kind of ride that wave, there's a lot of beauty to discover. I would say that there's a lot in being open and vulnerable and asking for what you want. I've given a lot to people who have slid into my DMs and pestered me and been like, I want to work for you. I want to help. Let me know when I can help. And I'm like, damn, okay, I'll remember you. And I do, you know what I mean? The people that are more passive, I forget, right? And I think that there's something said for the people that are fearless, that keep coming back and pushing for what they want, that it actually really does work, and that you really can manifest the reality that you want. I think as we move forward too, we should be asking how we want to live and what it feels like every day, instead of like what we want to be, right? Because I think that that's how we can become happiness, or find happiness.
That's powerful. That's really powerful.
Yeah, super inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing that.
My pleasure. This is so fun.
We want to thank you so much for joining us today. It was such an insightful episode, and we're wondering where our listeners can find you. I'm sure they would love to follow you and see what you do and what you're about.
Yeah, at Clare Gillen. No I in Clare, so CLARE _ GILLEN. Gilly Studio is my little studio, and hopefully there'll be some funny things in the pipeline in the next few months. So
looking forward to it.
Yes, we're looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Claire, for your spending your time with us, your energy. You know, it was a pleasure. And have a great day over there, you know?
Yeah.
You too. Have a good night.
Thank you.